The searing glare of missile flares reflecting off the oil-slicked waters of the Strait of Hormuz is not merely a regional crisis. It is a brutal, kinetic indictment of a defense establishment that has seemingly lost its way, even as it parades shiny new hardware across a Pentagon tarmac. We witness an apparent paradox: a nation capable of engineering multi-billion-dollar, next-generation assault platforms, yet simultaneously exposing fundamental vulnerabilities in the most critical choke points of global commerce and strategic power projection. How can the greatest military in human history, one that can conjure such technological marvels, appear so fundamentally compromised in a strategic bottleneck that has defined global energy security for generations? What deeper rot does this paradox expose within the very foundations of American power? And how does it compromise the lethality of the American warfighter against determined adversaries? The recent unveiling of a new, advanced assault helicopter is presented to the American public as a testament to unparalleled technological superiority, a beacon of future war-fighting capability. This is not simply an incremental upgrade. It is often framed as a generational leap, promising unprecedented speed, range, and survivability, integrating advanced sensor suites and potentially even manned-unmanned teaming capabilities. The engineers and program managers, no doubt, genuinely believe in its transformative potential. They envision these advanced rotorcraft as the spearhead of future air assaults, capable of penetrating sophisticated anti-access/area denial bubbles, delivering kinetic effects deep within enemy territory, and providing agile fire support across multi-domain operations. The sheer scale of investment into such a platform, the decades of research and development, the thousands of jobs sustained within the defense industrial base, all coalesce around a narrative of progress and an unwavering commitment to maintaining a decisive overmatch against any near-peer competitor. This platform is designed to replace aging fleets, to extend the operational reach of our ground forces, and to reassert American dominance in the skies over potential future battlefields. The conceptual framework behind it is robust, forged in the crucible of evolving threat landscapes and the persistent demands for greater expeditionary capabilities from our combatant commanders. Yet, as the media trumpets these technological triumphs, the harsh realities of the Strait of Hormuz continue to underscore a different, far more unsettling truth. This narrow waterway, barely 21 miles wide at its narrowest point, a gauntlet through which a substantial portion of the world's seaborne oil supply must pass, has become a recurring theater for the exposure of American strategic limitations. Here we face a determined, asymmetric adversary, not with exquisite, multi-billion-dollar systems, but with a doctrine of swarming fast attack craft, shore-based anti-ship cruise missiles, naval mines, and increasingly sophisticated unmanned aerial and surface vehicles. These are not threats that demand a next-generation assault helicopter to neutralize. They are threats that demand a fundamental reassessment of naval force posture, agile counter-swarm tactics, and an operational mindset that prioritizes readiness and kinetic capability over bureaucratic processes and aspirational, long-horizon programs. The challenges in Hormuz are less about a lack of high-end technology and more about a strategic failure to adapt to gray zone warfare, an inability to consistently project credible deterrence against a foe operating below the threshold of conventional conflict. The disconnect is stark. On one hand, we are promised a future where our warfighters will command the skies with unprecedented sophistication. On the other, the present reality reveals a persistent struggle to secure freedom of navigation in a vital maritime artery against a seemingly less technologically advanced, but strategically cunning adversary. This isn't merely a tactical gap. It's a systemic failure, one rooted in the deeply entrenched processes of the Pentagon and the pervasive influence of the military-industrial complex. The decision to pour vast sums into a new helicopter program, while crucial vulnerabilities persist, often stems from a complex interplay of factors that have little to do with immediate kinetic threats or the frontline warfighter's urgent needs. Consider the defense acquisition process itself, a labyrinthine beast often described as the valley of death for innovative ideas, where programs are born, morph, and frequently die under the weight of requirements creep, budget battles, and political maneuvering. A new assault helicopter, like any major defense program, begins with a set of requirements meticulously crafted by various stakeholders across the services. These requirements, initially driven by genuine operational needs, are often inflated over time, absorbing new technologies and mission sets, thereby driving up costs and extending development timelines. Each new feature, each incremental performance metric, adds complexity, pushing the system further into the realm of exquisite capability at the expense of mass production, affordability, and timely fielding. The lobbying efforts from prime contractors are relentless, influencing everything from the initial request for proposals to congressional appropriations. These companies, driven by shareholder value and long-term revenue streams, are incentivized to propose the most technologically advanced and often most expensive solutions, regardless of their immediate applicability to the most pressing geopolitical flashpoints. They are masters of the program of record game, securing multi-decade contracts that become virtually impossible to cancel, even when circumstances change or superior, more cost-effective alternatives emerge. This ensures a steady flow of taxpayer dollars into their coffers, often at the expense of genuinely transformative or urgent capabilities. This dynamic creates a profound misalignment. While the defense industry champions the technological prowess and future relevance of its new platforms, the immediate threats in places like Hormuz demand a different kind of strategic agility. The Iranian strategy in the Strait is a classic example of anti-access/area denial, a 2/AD, applied within a confined maritime space. They understand that directly confronting a U.S. carrier strike group in a blue water engagement is suicidal. Instead, they leverage the geography of the Persian Gulf, the shallow waters, and the proximity to their own coastline to create a kill zone. Their tactics focus on saturating the battle space with numerous, relatively inexpensive, and often expendable assets. Small, fast boats armed with rockets and machine guns, designed to harass and overwhelm. Coastal defense crews, missiles capable of targeting large surface combatants. Advanced naval mines that can cripple or sink even the largest vessels. And a growing arsenal of surveillance and attack drones. These elements are not individually overwhelming, but in concert, they present a complex, multi-layered threat that can significantly raise the cost of intervention, force U.S. naval assets to operate further from shore, and potentially inflict politically unacceptable casualties. This is asymmetric warfare at its most effective, leveraging inherent geographic advantages and a willingness to accept losses against a technologically superior adversary constrained by rules of engagement and a profound aversion to casualties. The doctrine underlying this new assault helicopter program, in many ways, reflects a strategic mindset that, while valid for certain peer-on-peer conflicts, may be less suited to these persistent gray zone challenges. The U.S. Army's Future Vertical Lift, FVL, initiatives from which such a platform emerges aims to deliver superior speed, range, and network connectivity, allowing ground forces to maneuver and fight in highly contested environments. These aircraft are designed to operate over vast distances, connect seamlessly with joint forces, and withstand sophisticated air defenses. This is certainly crucial for hypothetical large-scale conflicts against a resurgent Russia or a rising China in theaters like Eastern Europe or the Western Pacific. However, the operational tempo and threat profile in Hormuz are fundamentally different. The immediate need there is for persistent presence, real-time intelligence fusion, rapid response to swarm attacks, and the ability to project credible deterrence through a combination of lethal force and robust defensive measures that are tailored to the unique environment. a multi-billion-dollar helicopter optimized for deep strike and long-range reconnaissance. While impressive, might find its tactical utility constrained by the sheer volume and dispersed nature of the threats in a constricted maritime corridor. The E-ring, the innermost corridor of the Pentagon, where the most senior military and civilian leaders make their decisions, often struggles with this duality. The emphasis, perhaps rightly, remains on preparing for the high-end fight, the existential clash between great powers. This leads to prioritizing systems that excel in that hypothetical conflict. But this focus can inadvertently create blind spots for the more immediate, persistent, and insidious challenges posed by adversaries operating below the threshold of declared warfare. The intelligence community provides assessments detailing these asymmetric threats, yet those warnings can often be filtered, downplayed, or reinterpreted through the lens of existing acquisition priorities. Programs that have already secured substantial funding and political capital tend to persist, even when new intelligence points to evolving threats that demand a different strategic response. This is not necessarily malice. It is the natural consequence of a vast bureaucracy seeking to optimize for perceived future threats, often at the expense of addressing present vulnerabilities with pragmatic, adaptable solutions. The internal competition between services for budget share also plays a critical role, with each branch advocating for programs that enhance its specific mission set, sometimes creating redundancies or leaving gaps in joint capabilities. The global consequences of this strategic misalignment are profound. When the U.S. appears hesitant or ineffective in securing freedom of navigation in a vital choke point like Hormuz, it signals weakness to both allies and adversaries. To allies, particularly those in the Gulf region who rely on American security guarantees, it erodes confidence in the credibility of U.S. power projection. To adversaries like China and Russia, who are actively seeking to challenge the U.S.-led international order, it offers an object lesson in exploiting perceived vulnerabilities. They observe that while America invests heavily in advanced platforms for future conflicts, it can be tied down and frustrated by relatively low-cost, asymmetric tactics. This emboldens their own A2/AD strategies in areas like the South China Sea or the Black Sea, encouraging them to develop similar porcupine defenses that aim to deter a superior conventional force by making the cost of intervention prohibitively high. The perceived erosion of deterrence in one theater can have ripple effects across the globe, encouraging a more aggressive posture from revisionist powers and creating instability in other strategic regions. Behind the polished press briefings and the optimistic projections, the U.S. military is grappling with a deeper reality. The internal debates are not about whether new technology is needed, but about which technology, for what fight, and at what cost to current readiness. The Joint Requirements Oversight Council, JROC, responsible for validating military requirements, is often a battleground where service chiefs jockey for resources, attempting to align their respective procurement strategies with the overarching strategic guidance, all while balancing their own institutional imperatives. The planning, programming, budgeting, and execution, PPB, process, a multi-year cycle of planning, budgeting, and resource allocation, locks in spending decisions years in advance, making it incredibly difficult to pivot rapidly when new threats emerge or existing strategies prove ineffective. This rigidity, while providing stability, can stifle innovation and prevent agile adaptation. The revolving door phenomenon, where senior military officers and defense officials transition directly into lucrative positions within the defense industry, further complicates this landscape, creating incentives to maintain existing programs and relationships rather than fundamentally disrupt the status quo. This is not a conspiracy. It's a systemic feature of how Washington operates, where expertise and influence are highly valued commodities. Consider the historical context. Decades ago, during the Cold War, the focus was largely on conventional force-on-force engagements against a monolithic adversary. The emphasis was on sheer numbers and overwhelming technological superiority in platforms like tanks, fighter jets, and attack helicopters. The AH-64 Apache, for instance, revolutionized attack aviation with its sophisticated targeting systems and anti-armor capabilities, designed to counter vast Soviet tank formations on the plains of Europe. Its development, while protracted and costly, was directly tied to a clear, existential threat. The current generation of platforms, including the next-gen assault helicopter, builds upon this legacy, aiming for even greater survivability and networked capabilities. However, the nature of warfare has diversified. The pivot from counterinsurgency operations in the global war on terror back to great power competition has been challenging, not least because the adversaries and tactics in great power competition are far from monolithic. We face sophisticated state actors with advanced capabilities, but also non-state actors and proxy forces employing asymmetric, gray zone tactics designed to circumvent our traditional advantages. The problem in Hormuz isn't a lack of Apaches or even the promise of a future, faster helicopter. It's a failure of holistic strategic integration and adaptive deterrence. The naval doctrine of distributed maritime operations, DMO, and the Army's multi-domain operations, MDO, are attempts to address these challenges, but their implementation requires not just new platforms, but a complete overhaul of training, logistics, and command and control. The ability to sense, decide, and act faster than an adversary, particularly one employing swarm tactics in a confined space, is paramount. This demands highly resilient communications, seamless interoperability between different services and allied forces, and empowered decision-making at lower echelons. The bureaucratic overhead, however, frequently works against this agility. Operational commanders on the ground often express frustration over the glacial pace of procurement for non-sexy, but critically important capabilities like advanced electronic warfare systems, resilient communications, or even simply more ammunition for existing platforms. While headline-grabbing, multi-billion-dollar programs continue to consume the lion's share of attention and resources. The long-term implications for U.S. global supremacy are significant. If the American defense establishment cannot effectively address vulnerabilities in strategic choke points, even as it develops advanced platforms, it creates a perception of a military capable of winning the last war, or a hypothetical future war, but not necessarily the one being fought in the present. This erodes the credibility of our security guarantees, encourages strategic adventurism by revisionist powers, and ultimately threatens the stability of the global economic order that underpins American prosperity. The America First military must be a lethal, focused, and adaptable force, one that prioritizes kinetic reality over bureaucratic inertia and strategic posturing. It means ruthlessly eliminating waste, challenging entrenched interests, and ensuring that every dollar spent directly contributes to the warfighter's ability to deter aggression and, if necessary, prevail in conflict. The current trajectory, where perceived weakness in vital regions coexists with lavish investment in distant future capabilities, is unsustainable. The true strength of a military isn't merely in its technological arsenal, but in its strategic acumen, its readiness, its adaptability, and its unwavering commitment to protecting national interests against all threats, seen and unseen, conventional and asymmetric. The unveiling of a new assault helicopter is indeed a marvel of engineering, a testament to American ingenuity. But if that ingenuity is compartmentalized, if it fails to address the very real, immediate vulnerabilities that expose our strategic soft underbelly, then it becomes a hollow victory. The challenge in Hormuz is not simply about an adversary's capabilities. It is about our own institutional capacity to respond effectively, to prioritize wisely, and to ensure that our strategic objectives are met with tactical competence, regardless of the technological disparity. The focus on high-end, exquisite systems often diverts resources and attention from maintaining readiness, developing agile, asymmetric counters to gray zone threats, and ensuring that our forces are properly equipped and trained for the realities of contemporary conflict, not just the hypotheticals of future warfare. This structural erosion of military readiness, masked by the fanfare of new program announcements, poses a far greater threat to American security than any single adversary. Ultimately, the test of American military power is not just its technological prowess, but its ability to adapt, prioritize, and project credible, decisive force where it truly matters, without being mired in internal politics and self-serving bureaucracies. We must ask ourselves if we are building the military we need, or merely the military the defense industrial complex wants to build. If the very fabric of our strategic thinking remains fragmented, if our institutional priorities are misaligned with kinetic reality, then what future awaits a global hegemon that can build a magnificent new rotorcraft, yet struggles to assert its will in a waterway barely 100 miles wide?